1 week season.
What is going on, OWS fam, DFS fam? Welcome to the DFS Lab, edition number 4 of week 16, final edition. We've got a Saturday main slate this week. I am your host, JM to Win, here with my man, KTM 128. Keegan, how are you doing after rescuing your wife from the weather yesterday?
I'm doing great. I'm ready to get our final video in for this week. Get this.
Yeah, I don't know if you watched yesterday, but I flew solo yesterday. I went ahead and put together a roster.
Oh,
and
dude, that's awesome.
I put together a Daniel Jones roster, not recognizing that that wasn't until after I finished the show that I looked at ownership projections. He's projecting as the highest owned quarterback on the slate this week. So not what I was expecting when I built that.
Wow, really?
But I built Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook roster. 3 of the 4 times that Dalvin has hit this year, Jefferson also hit. So basically it's like Vikings score a ton of points. Both guys get in on the action. Jefferson's projected 20% ownership. Dalvin's projected 20% ownership, but like nobody's going to play them together. Daniel Jones projected 15% ownership, but if he's going to hit, it's probably in a game where Jefferson and Dalvin are both hitting as well. So
yeah,
kind of a unique build yesterday.
Just like a super chalky build, but like such odd chalk that it's like
exactly, yeah, and like put together in a way that nobody else has it. So yeah, it's like, you know, if you've had those rosters where you have like the one low owned piece that's putting up a bunch of points, and you're just like vaulting past everybody in the standings, and that's the problem with chalk is, you know, you'll be like heading into the late games with a couple chalky pieces, 5 points out of the money, and you're like, okay, I'll get there. And they both put up like a solid game, and you're still 5 points out of the money because you just like, you don't move. So with one of these where it's like, yeah, it's chalky pieces, but if Dalvin's like keeping pace, then Jefferson's vaulting you over the Dalvin roster, and then Jefferson's keeping pace, Dalvin's vaulting you over the Jefferson roster. So it just like it kind of still puts you in position to move ahead of the field with those types of builds. With that, we're on to, it's Friday. The slate kicks off tomorrow. So kind of curious where you want to go on this build. I think the starting point, as we've talked about, is to Derrick Henry or not to Derrick Henry. One of the things we hadn't mentioned, we hadn't gotten into the numbers. He's got 4 straight games against Houston of 211 plus rushing yards and 2+ touchdowns. But Houston's also been I think it's top 5 DVOA defense over the last month. Obviously, they're going to sell out to stop Henry. Malik Willis threw the ball 10 times the last time these two teams played and still took 3 sacks. So I think the Houston defense is still interesting. They put up 8 points the last time these teams played in spite of Derrick Henry having a monster game. So you could even play them with Derrick Henry. But on this roster, what are you thinking, Keegan? Are we going Derrick Henry or are we going away from Derrick Henry?
Man, you know, last time I was here, we did one going away from Derrick Henry. So let's throw Derrick Henry in there.
Where do you think your total, let's say you build 80 rosters this week, where do you think your total percentage exposure to Derrick Henry will end up?
Probably like 70-30.
Okay. 70 with and 30 without? Or yeah. Okay, I like that. I like it because he's only projecting for 20, but I feel like that's low. Or maybe he's projecting for like 28. But you either want, like, in my mind, you can be even with the field, that's fine. But like, in order to gain an edge, ideally you're either like half the field or maybe not double the field on a 30% owned guy, but like well above the field. And then his main competition is for like 35+ point scores. His main competition is Christian McCaffrey, Justin Jefferson. Christian McCaffrey is also going to be popular. So it's not like we get some sort of leverage by like, oh, this is the low owned guy here, right? It's more like either or who hits. Christian McCaffrey in this match against this really good Washington run defense. Obviously, he's going to get targets and whatnot, but I think he ends up in like this 25 to 30 point range, but tough for him to put up like a 35 to 40 point or so. I'll definitely be higher on Henry than on Christian McCaffrey. And I'm going to have a lot of, I talked about this on the site this week, but playing Henry kind of compels me to play Justin Jefferson on those rosters because I want to think about how can I be different with my Henry roster, right? And most people who have Henry won't have Jefferson. And then when I don't play Henry, it compels me to play Jefferson because it's like, okay, if Henry still puts up 22, 23 points, how do I move past those rosters? Well, those rosters probably don't have Jefferson. Jefferson can put up 35+. So just like not necessarily me saying, oh, Jefferson's going to have this monster weekend, but just the nature of the strategy of the slate, it kind of compels me to end up on a ton of Jefferson this week because it's like I want Jefferson on some Henry rosters. I want Jefferson off of Henry rosters. So yeah, we're going to throw Derick Henry in on this one. And then I do think it's interesting to go with like CMC or Jefferson on here, but there's also a lot of other interesting things we can do. So I'll let you kind of take the wheel on what we want to do next on this one.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll throw Derick Henry on there for now. And maybe if we go too crazy, we can take him off and maybe try something else.
Yeah, and we had that. I really like that McKinnon Swift build that we had the other day because it's like you look at McKinnon's carries and targets, they're basically Swift's carries and targets. And yet people look at Swift and they're like, well, he hasn't hit and he needs more touches, right? It's like he really doesn't. He can hit for the McKinnon scores on his touches. It just hasn't happened. And if both of them go for that type of score, you've got 60 plus points at like no salary, you know? So I definitely like I think that's an interesting way to go when you move away from the Henry ones because there's like legit ceiling. It's not like Devin Singletary, who has 4 games in his career north of 20 points. It's like maybe he gets there again, but his chance of putting up like a 30, 35 pointer or so low, whereas Swift and McKinnon can actually do that and actually separate from the field. But yeah, Derrick Henry, you thinking quarterback next, or you thinking kind of make a decision on one of these other high-priced players next?
I kind of want to make a decision if we want JJ in there or not.
All right, cool. What are you thinking? Have you built many Henry and Jefferson rosters this week?
Yeah, just because of like how you talked about it. Basically, I have built that, but then like I usually kind of try and stack it with Kirk Cousins, just because I like the Jefferson Cousins lineup, and then I don't really start with Henry, but I kind of try to fit him in there if I can.
Okay, I like that. So we can we can have Henry on this, and then like you said, we can kind of make that decision deeper in. So we want to throw Jefferson on this one, and then are you thinking throw Jefferson plus Cousins, or are you thinking kind of twist things and go a little bit of a different direction on this one?
Let's twist things around and see what we can get.
Okay, cool. So one of the things I've been thinking about, we really haven't touched the quarterback. We've had this like one Seattle piece per roster rule. We haven't touched the quarterbacks in that game. I don't think we can get Mahomes on this one, but Geno is interesting as a guy who can easily put up 25 to 30 points in this spot. You look through his game logs, a lot of like 18 to 24 pointers, right? Which is just a really solid range of scores for a guy at this price tag. And then the occasional score that pops above that. We could also go down to Minshew and just save some salary. Or we could go, I saw you hovering over Burrow. We could try to go like Burrow Chase and see if there's a way to fit that in. Or even like Burrow and Higgins or Burrow and something different that could kind of lower that salary a little bit.
I have yet to make like mini Burrow lineups this week, so I kind of do want to see what we can do with Burrow if that's okay.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because like if Burrow hits, one of Chase or Higgins is hitting. So we got to see like how the salary works on this one because it is potentially possible to build this roster. And I like building these rosters, especially on a show like this, where it's like, wait, can we actually do that? You know, and then we can see like, okay, we actually can do it and tally up the path to 200 plus points. So are we thinking Higgins or Chase on this one?
Well, I mean, Chase is so expensive. What is he at this week? He's 8,300. I mean,
yeah, what's it? Higgins is, I mean, you save 1,300 to go to Higgins, right? I mean, if we can fit one, we might be able to fit the other.
Where is Higgins at, you said?
Higgins at 7K.
7K. I mean, let's see. Let's just have some fun, see what we can do with Chase. I mean, that's 3 8,000 plus pieces on this.
And it's Jefferson that really tightens things up because you get all the way up to 9.3K.
Maybe we could either fade one of these 2 pieces off. But
but what's cool here is like Burrow's chances of like a monster game against New England are somewhat low, which is why you haven't built a lot of Burrow rosters. You said earlier in the week you don't like building rosters against Patriots pieces, but like if he hits, right, he and Chase can go for 70. If Henry and Jefferson both hit, they can go for 70, and all of a sudden you've got 140 points here. Yeah. And we've got a week where there's like some salary savings, right? So some players I'll throw at you. We've got Texans defense is 2,500.
That's where
We've got, and like I said, like they can get sacks and turnovers on Malik Willis, and Derrick Henry can still get 30 plus carries, you know?
Yeah.
So we've got, go ahead.
What do you think about the Bears defense?
We had them in our first build. I mean, I think it's interesting.
That's why I'm kind of leaning towards that.
Yeah, at 2K, and we can just it'll open up a lot. Bad weather there. We had those Cleveland pieces I think on that roster earlier this week, and now it's like horrible weather in Cleveland as well. I don't know if I talked about this on the show yesterday. Andy Dalton's over under for passing yards right now is 146.5, which he's beat in every single game this year. And I saw that, and I was like, well, why don't I just hammer the over? And then I was like, I better dig into the weather here. It's like, they're just like neither team's expected to pass in that game. So that's another spot where the defenses are interesting. But yeah, the Bills are only implied for like 23 points right now, which speaks to how bad the weather's supposed to be in that game. Totally fine with the Bears on this build.
Okay, awesome.
We've also got Jordan Akins at 2,900. We've done a lot of Fant, but I think that Fant is a guy who probably still sees 5 to 6 targets, right? Jordan Akins has 5 to 6 targets in 3 of his last 4 games. He's 2,900. So if we're looking at this roster, we're like, hey, where do we save salary? Here's a guy who can score. He's scored 10 plus points in 3 of his last 6 games. At 2,900, if he scores 10 to 15 points, I mean, we're sitting so pretty because of what it's opening up for us, right? I think a lot of times people play a guy like Akins and they don't use the salary correctly, but like we're using it on this scenario where we can basically collect like 140 points from these other guys. So that's a place where we could save salary, or we could go to one of these other tight ends if you're seeing somebody else that you like down here.
I mean, I love Akins. There's really not many people that I like below him, to be completely honest.
Yeah, and also like I said, we kept going to Fant. It kind of feels a little bit like the Broncos defense situation last week, which it ended up hitting right for 10 points. But it's like Fant is kind of like he stands out, but he's not a substantially better play than the other guys down here. It's just like a really thin tight end week. So and like I'm not trying to talk anybody off Fant. We have Fant on 2 of these builds that we've done, but like if Fant, assuming he plays with the knee issue, I think it's a knee issue. Assuming he plays, like I said, he still probably gets 5 to 6 targets. He still probably ends up with like these 4 catches for 30 yards, 4 for 40. So you're still waiting on the touchdown for him to really separate from anybody else. If he doesn't get that, then he's not really helping anybody. He's not really hurting anybody. So yeah, if we can vault over those rosters, save a little bit in salary, it's interesting this week because once we get outside these couple guys, there's like Bellinger, there's Hurst, but nobody has like a real ceiling. And then we get up to like the Goddards and Kittles, and you got to spend more salary on those guys. So yeah, I mean, if we throw in Akins here, we're gonna have enough for well, I guess running back's gonna make things difficult. You're gonna need like 5 point something K for running back in order to not sacrifice points there. But I guess that's gonna be the next thing we do.
Definitely.
And I think, right, like Swift has legit 20 to 30 point upside. Singletary can get 15 to 23. James Cook could get like 12 to 20. Chuba Hubbard could technically get in that like 12 to 20 point range with some pass catching work. If the Browns keep the ball on the ground a lot, Kareem Hunt could get some work. But I think once we get below Swift, it does get somewhat thin from like a projectable points standpoint.
Okay. Well, I mean, we can throw Swift in there and just see what we can grab with Swift.
And this might compel us to like pivot down to T. Higgins off of Jamar Chase, right? And then it's just like we're taking because I mean, there's no why we've seen it. There's no wideouts like under 3,500. Shaheed is 3,500. Nelson Aguilar is 3,300. Actually, Aguilar works on this opposite our Burrow and Chase. Aguilar has an 18-pointer this year, a 26-pointer this year. He's 3,300. But then we're still like our last spot is going to be would be sitting at like 3,100 in salary. And we need like at least 400 more. So what I'm wondering is, without like destroying the central thesis of this roster, which is how do we fit this Bengals passing attack and Derrick Henry and Justin Jefferson together, right? We might as well see if we can keep that central thesis in place. We could go down to T. Higgins, open up some salary, or we could go DeAndre Swift down to a different running back. We sacrifice a lot of like the chances of Higgins hitting are so much lower than the chances of Jamar Chase hitting.
Yeah.
And we're already on kind of a low percentage bet. At the same time, maybe the Patriots find a way to isolate Chase, and then that leads to Higgins having the big game. If we're talking like tournament builds, go for it.
Do any of the like Patriots like DBs like specifically can play man on Chase and just absolutely shut him down? Is that like a thing?
No. I mean, and I say that just because I don't know that there's anyone. We've seen it with Devontae Adams this year where people have shied away from the cornerback matchup, and like Pat Surtain on the Broncos and Devontae Adams still destroys them, right? But I think like collaboratively, the Patriots could have a plan that takes away Chase in this spot. Much harder for them to like just put one guy. I mean, I don't think that there's anybody in the league who you just cover Chase with one-on-one and shut him down for the game. But yeah, we can go to Higgins, or the other way to do it, if we want to like try to see if this roster is possible. The other way to do it is go down from Swift to like who is there down below Swift that we could say, hey, maybe they could still get you 20 points and like save us that salary.
P. Ryan, technically.
Yeah, except, I mean, he needs so much to go right. I think James Cook is the clearest guy. And we're kind of still on the same bet as the Bears defense, which was basically saying, or Kareem Hunt, where we're just playing to the weather and saying, like, these guys will get a lot of touches. The thing with James Cook, though, is he's been playing like 35, 40% of the snaps. He's going to get probably 2 to 4 targets and like 12 carries. So it's not like, yeah, I mean, I would build this both ways, right? Like I would build it with James Cook and Jamar Chase. Then I'd build it with T. Higgins and DeAndre Swift, and both of them would work. But yeah, we just kind of pick which one we want to do here. Either one is like on both of them, we're taking like a low percentage bet with the Burrow build. But since we've already committed to that, it's like, yeah, we know this is low percentage, but if it hits, it legit wins us a tournament, right? Because people won't be on it.
Absolutely.
And so either way, like it's like you build 80 rosters, you might have one of these with the Burrow Chase, you might have one of these with the Burrow Higgins, and then no other Burrow rosters, right? So it's not like a big chunk of your bankroll is on this, but you get this like different type of build. So I think it's, what do you want to do? You want to go James Cook and Jamar Chase, or you want to go T. Higgins and DeAndre Swift?
Man, I love this like Jamar Chase, James Cook. Let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. And then, now we've got the salary to go. So Shaheed's interesting because they're missing Olave. They're missing Jarvis Landry. Like I said, Andy Dalton's only projected to pass for like 145 yards. But they're going to, like, the only way for them to move the ball through the air is going to be to scheme up like some short area screen passes for Shaheed, get the ball in his hands. So, like, we could go Shaheed and Aguilar here. Aguilar, like, feels like a high-risk bet, but it matches really well with our Burrow and Jamar Chase bet. The other way to save some salary is Tyquan Thornton is 3K. He's going to be on the field every snap. He has a 20-pointer this year as the number 3 wide receiver for the Patriots. Tyquan Thornton's a speed guy. They're going to get him the ball in some short area throws and try to get him in space to run with it. Kind of like similar to Shaheed, right? And that would free us up to get up to like a more legit wide out in Shaheed's place. So like Tyquan Thornton's high risk, Shaheed's high risk, Aguilar's high risk, but Dotson is lower risk. Demarcus Robinson at 4K is lower risk. So those are a couple ways that we could play around with it. You look through these game logs, like 1 point, 1 point, 2 points, 2 points, and then this 21 pointer. But he's on every snap, and he's certainly capable of putting out that type of score.
Okay, so if we grab him here, how much do we have left?
If we grab him, we have enough to get up to Demarcus Robinson, who's consistently putting up like 8 to 14 points, or Jahan Dotson, who's put up like 18 plus or 16 plus points in 4 of his 6 healthy games, which is just obscene for a guy at 3,900. But then also, like, we could go the Aguilar Shaheed route as well, right? And just say we're on low percentage bets across this Burrow Patriots build regardless. But if it hits big. Shaheed's going to get the touches. Low floor, but a high ceiling on Shaheed. So, I'm fine with either way here. We can go Tyquan Thornton and then Dotson or Demarcus Robinson. And you can pull up those on Demarcus Robinson and Dotson, like their game logs. They're pretty solid. Dotson, all these low score games, he was like playing limited snaps coming back from injury. So it's like weeks 1, 2, and 3. And then the last 3 weeks is really like our clearest understanding of who Dotson is. Those are ridiculous scores for a guy at 3,900.
Decent games in the past 2 weeks, and he's still 3,900.
Yeah, and the 49ers forced the second highest opponent pass play rate. So eventually the Commanders are going to have to pass the ball here. So, I like Dotson a lot down here at 3,900.
Yeah, I think we might be going Dotson here.
And then look at Robinson, these 2 games with Huntley, 6 targets in each of these games. Had these 2 really down games, but then a bunch of other games, kind of 7 points, 10 points, 11, 24, 15. He's very much in the mix as well for me in this spot. Soft matchup against Atlanta. Obviously, they're not going to pass the ball a ton, but when they do, he's going to get targets. So if we're going Tyquan Thornton, that's basically what it buys us, is like a little bit more certainty on this other cheaper wide out, whereas Shaheed could get 20, but could also get like 2 or 3, whereas these guys are likely to get to this 15 or 20 point range.
Yeah. Boom.
This is a higher risk roster than we've built so far. Yeah. But what I like about it, like I said, like if you're like, well, I'm going to build 60, 70, 80 rosters, like, it's not like this is our main build, but we have this really interesting bet. Like, what if Burrow and Chase can take off and then force the Patriots to throw the ball? This is almost like a Millie Maker type roster, because then you got
Millie Maker type roster.
Yeah, it's like low percentage, but if it hits, the ceiling's really high, and then you fit in Chase and Henry alongside Burrow. Jefferson and Henry alongside Burrow and Chase, which doesn't look possible to do, but with the cheaper defenses available, with how thin tight end is, and the fact that we can justify going down to Akins, it does open things up to do a build like this. Like I said, we could do it like a second time and throw T. Higgins in. And in fact, we've got time here. We've got, I don't know, we usually go 30 minutes. So let's rework this. Let's take out Chase. Let's throw in Higgins and then put in Swift instead of James Cook. And we'll see like the other way that we could build this roster, because we build it multiple ways, and we'll have the salary left to do something interesting in one of these last spots. And we've increased our ceiling at running back with Swift as well by doing this.
Now we have.
Now we've got, 800 in salary. We still want a Patriots piece, so we can like pivot up to Aguilar, but then this buys us enough to get up to Marquise Goodwin basically instead of Jahan Dotson, and just get this like high probability bet, a guy who's definitely going to see 6 to 8 targets, chasing points against a bad pass defense, like with a downfield role, explosiveness to his game. We can end up with Aguilar. Buys us a little bit of a higher. Oh no, we're at 4,400. We're 100 shy of what? No, we needed 43 for Goodwin, so we're right in line to get Goodwin. Aguilar is like, pull up Aguilar's game logs. We can compare them to what we saw with Tyquan Thornton, where Tyquan Thornton had all those like 1 to 2 point games. Aguilar, it's like a lot of 1 and 3, but then also these 8s. He has the 18. You scroll down farther, he has a 26 pointer. So like his range is a little bit higher than Thornton's, and like his chance of hitting his ceiling are higher. And so if we kind of complete this Bengals bet, same thing, right? We're like low probability on this Bengals bet, but if it hits, man, I mean, we're like staring down the barrel of a first place finish, because Henry's pretty high probability. Swift's a great play. Jefferson's high probability. Goodwin's high probability. Akins is one of the sharpest, like cheap ways you can go at tight end. And then the Bears defense is just like a way to spend no salary and probably get 5 to 8 points. So if all the other like sub 3K defenses also score around 8, 9 points, we're in great shape there. I kind of like this as like, hey, look, this is 2 out of our 80 rosters, or 2 out of our 50 rosters, 2 out of 40 rosters, or whatever. But super unique way to go here. Any final thoughts on this, on anything else? Any other things you've been kind of looking at this week that you want to pick my brains on or talk about? No?
Basically on this, it just shows like how quick and easy, even like if you're hand building, it is to just move a few pieces around and then enter in both lineups into like those high entry tournaments and just see if one of them hits, it's great.
Yeah. And like we talked about too, like if you kind of start with like a central focus on the roster, where we've had this one was, hey, how do we fit in these high priced pieces? Or we had like the Goff builds. You start with like the central focus, you get like your core piece around it, and then you're like 6 pieces in, and it's like, okay, well, now we can mix and match some of the other pieces from there, which is like a few weeks ago where I had a bunch of rosters that finished up near the tops of all these tournaments. Like it was the same like core 6 bets or so, and then it was just mixed and matched pieces around that, which it's harder to do that with an optimizer of like, okay, here's this core, and then like build 20 rosters around this core that I like, right? It's just like a bigger mix and match. Whereas when you're hand building, you can do this where it's like you swap in the pieces. And we spent 20 minutes building this, but if you're not talking through it with somebody, it might have been 10 minutes, 5 minutes, and then you get like 3 or 4 other versions of the build. You spend 5-10 minutes, and you've got 4 rosters there that you feel good about, like you're putting in play. And there's Goldie. And then I think we might be about done. But since we're aware that we're building a bunch of rosters, it allows us to kind of attack those ceiling bets that like people who are just building one roster or in that one roster mindset, they're not able to do. They're like, well, Burrow's a bad play. And we're like, yeah, but Burrow can also hit for a monster ceiling in this spot. So, or in any spot, I should say. And so we build one of those rosters around it, take a shot on that. And then that's why people are like, oh, those 150 roster people, they always win because they can cover all their bases. Like they don't cover all their bases. They just know how to allocate like, okay, this much exposure to this bet, this much exposure to this bet. And this is a good level of exposure to have, is like a few of these Burrow builds. All right, with that, I'm going to get out of here because the kids have been kind of in a rough spot this morning. As always, Keegan, thanks for hanging out. We will see you guys back here next week on the DFS Lab, Tuesday through Saturday next week. We have a Sunday main slate. We will see you on the site throughout the weekend, and we will see you at the top of the leaderboards. Yesterday I said on Sunday, but we will see you there on Sunday on the 3-game slate, but also on Saturday.